Alright, welcome back. We are live for episode 4 in the struggle series. Today we're looking at stress. This is something I've talked about a couple of times this week. I talked about it in the podcast, but I think it's particularly prevalent at the minute, so it's worth talking about it as much as possible and giving people as much information and some useful things that they can do, because we're undoubtedly in a time of big stress at the minute for many people, particularly women. I know you're going to be at home looking after the kids. Some of you may not be able to work. Some of you may be trying to work from home and look after the kids. Some of you are trying to do everything, so inevitably you're going to be facing a little bit of stress. I think everybody is at the moment, irrespective of what the situation is at home or work or whatever. So we're going to dig into stress again. If you've already seen the podcast from this week, I forgive you for not watching this, but please do share it with someone who you think might get use out of it. If you go back to the first video, which is all listed up in here, I talk about how I want to try and reach 500,000 women, so that's 500,000 women, and have some kind of impact. So I'm going to need some help with that, so make sure you share in these videos. There are links in the description to the previous videos. So you've got anxiety, which was video 1, self-acceptance, which is video 2, purpose is video 3, and then obviously today is on stress. So please share those, and we'll get this out to as many people as possible. So with that said, stress, something that everybody suffers from at one time or another. Particularly in modern life and with things the way they are, most of us find ourselves in a state of constant stress. And when you're in that state of constant stress, you're unable to effectively deal with anything. Okay, stress is a stopper. It's not possible on a physiological level to deal with anything else, because stress impacts your mind, your body, and your emotions. So it has a threefold effect on everything. And to actually live your life in a way that is fulfilling and leads to happiness and is effectively limitless, you need to be able to master the mind, your physical energy, your emotions, all of these things, because they're what put you in a place of creation. And you need to be in a place of creation in order to actually create a life that you love. So stress prevents that from happening. We need to be able to find a balance between the body, the mind, and the emotions. And if you're in a state of stress, you can't do that. Stress upsets the balance in the biggest way possible. And you as a human, you need balance, you need that equilibrium. You're no different to anything else in nature. When you get off balance, things go wrong. So if we look at stress a little bit deeper, a little bit more on a sciencey level, your brain takes in data, from the external world, and it processes it. And if it perceives there to be a threat of some kind, the autonomic nervous system will kick in, and that is essentially made up of two systems. There's the parasympathetic system and there is the sympathetic system, and they work together. So they switch things on and they switch things off. It's very simple. One turns things on, one turns things off. And that's what happens when your fight or flight mode gets activated. Adrenal glands start to pump out the adrenaline, your heartbeat gets faster, blood pressure rises, your muscles get tense, breathing rate increases, all the senses sharpen, glucose and sugar floods your system, so you've got that maximum amount of energy that you need to actually either have a fight or run away. The other thing that happens, which is the big one, something called the HPA axis, that sends out cortisol, which is the main stress hormone, and that keeps you alert and it keeps you ready and it keeps you on that level where everything's ticking over and you kind of amped up and wound up. Most people would say it's almost like this restless feeling, where you may be a little bit tired and a little bit drained, but you're restless and you feel the need to do something and to go, and that's the stress hormone at play. When you combine those chemicals, the adrenaline and the cortisol, you end up in that amped up state with the heart rate higher, the elevated blood pressure, insulin constantly being released, glucose in the system, your digestion starts to get reduced, and all these other processes. So on a physical level, that's quite a dramatic thing. It leads to heart attacks, it leads to stomach issues, it leads to weight gain and insulin resistance. It's all these kind of things that can be quite damaging for you just from stress. And then on a neurological level, because you've got these chemicals going in and out and they're all over the place, it creates imbalances in the brain. And those imbalances can lead to mental illness. They can also change the physical structure of the white matter in your brain, which will affect your memory and your cognition. Your brain is shrinking. It's literally withering away from the effects of stress. And you know what it's like when you're in a highly stressed state. Although you're restless and you're amped up, you can't actually concentrate on anything. It's so hard to get anything done because you don't have the ability to calm and find that focus. It feels like you can't remember anything, you're forgetting basic things. And that's stress affecting you neurologically. Long term, this leads to headaches. I know when I get stressed out, I get massive migraines. It can lead to chronic inflammation in the body, which leads to pain, so your body might hurt for no apparent reason. As I've already mentioned, heart attacks, you've got stroke, hypertension and blood pressure issues, even diabetes and thought issues, weight gain, hormonal changes. It can affect everything. It's a massive, massive thing, but we're all living with it. And we're all living with it on a chronic level, because it happens to most of us every day. It's this chronic stress that we're not designed for. We're designed for short, intense bursts of stress that are necessary for survival, not prolonged stress at a base level that then dips and rises, okay? We're constantly in this survival mode, this fight or flight, which is great if you actually are in danger and you need to fight a lion or run away from a bear, but for someone that lives a modern existence in the modern world, we're not living in those situations where we need that. So the stress is damaging our body when it's not necessary. So it's massively, massively troubling for anyone that wants to get to a higher level of consciousness, who wants to level up their life, who wants to live better, who wants to be more, do more, have more, all of these things. And for many of us, modern life itself is a stressor. Okay, there are variables. Some people will get stressed out by something that is completely irrelevant to another person, but across the board, most of us are stressed by very, very similar things. And depending on what you value most, you'll notice little differences, but as a general rule, most of us are stressed out by the same thing. So there are trends across the board with little elements of individuality, which does make it quite a broad thing. But the good thing is, because we know how stress works, we know the physiological effects, we know the neurological effects, there are universal things that we can do to deal with it. There are loads of little things that you can do daily that don't take much effort, that you can do for free to help bring down that stress. And the key to that is dropping ourselves out of that survival mode and trying to restore that balance, that equilibrium between the body, the mind and the emotions. So to do that, you've got to consider the starting point, which is the brain. Okay, one of the highest indicators of stress is a change in the brain waves, because your brain works through a combination of electrical signals and chemicals, because it's an electrochemical organ. So you've got a combination of electrical impulses going through the brain and also chemicals, and those things help with the processing and the functioning and everything, the automatic functions of your body, and then the data processing from the external world. When you get stressed out, those little brain waves, they start to go up, okay? And that reduces your ability to think clearly, and it takes you away from a place of focus and clarity and sort of ability to create anything, okay? And when you're in that state, you've got no chance of creating any new patterns or breaking habits or doing the work that is required to actually level your life up. This stage, if you want to be scientific, we generally call it as the beta. So it's the beta brain waves, and it's this high beta state. Don't confuse it with gamma, which is basically a step above that, where we've effectively surpassed everything and we've gone to this higher level of consciousness, this higher level of thinking that most people don't get to without years and years and years of meditative training and that kind of stuff. But for most of us, we exist in this state of high beta, and that's our baseline. And what we want to be able to do is drop below that into something that is more beneficial. So there's a series of levels that are below that high beta. Ones that are associated with focus, which is your alpha brainwaves. You go down into your theta brainwaves, which are your meditative states, hypnosis, and then right down into delta, which is when you're asleep. Okay, obviously we don't want to drop too low during the day, but sometimes it can get to the point where your stress is actually preventing you reaching that delta, so your sleep is affected. If your sleep is affected, you become more stressed. The physical implications are massive as well. So being able to control these brain waves, not only during the day, but before you go to bed, can dramatically change your stress levels and then your overall well-being. So the main goal initially would be to drop down into sort of an alpha state, which would be really beneficial during the day because you've got a relaxed focus, the ability to consider what's going on with logic and perspective and reason, rather than coming at everything from an amped up emotional state because you're in survival. And then ideally we'd be able to learn to take that even further down so that we can start to create new subconscious patterns, and then obviously also be able to control our ability to sleep better. The easiest way to do this is through breath work. Okay, meditation, any kind of breath work. There's so many different types. There's, the Wim Hof method, you've probably heard of him. There's the old school Buddhist type breathing. There's loads and loads of different things. There's some of the more modern ones which combine all of the things, like the type of stuff I do, which is a combination of some various different bits and pieces that are put together to maximize it. And I also do different types, so if I want to sleep better, the type of breathing work I will do is different to what I would do if I'm trying to level up my life or if I'm just trying to calm myself down. So there's different types of breath work for different situations, but all of it has one thing in common, which is that drop in the brainwaves, and it's that dropping that creates a reduction in the stress. Okay, and if you get really good at it, then you can control your stress on a physiological and a psychological standpoint, and it's massively beneficial. There was actually a guy on, I think it's Good Morning or This Morning or whatever, I don't watch daytime TV, but he was with Eamon and Ruth, and he was taking them through some heart breathing, which is a fairly new type of breathing thing that has come out as studies have come out between studying the coherence between the brain and the heart. People are starting to understand that everything is interconnected, and by focusing on the heart as you breathe, you can actually drop the brain waves and you can create a whole body coherent state, which is massive for your overall well-being. I won't go into details with it because it's something that I do quite in depth within my programs. So if you are interested in that, I'm going to put up a link. Just book a call with me and we can talk about that. But for now, understand that stress is a huge issue, okay, particularly at the moment given the current state of things, and that stress hampers your ability to do anything. Okay, it makes you poorly physically and mentally, and it just prevents you from being able to have that life that you want to have. Okay, successful stress management is a key to progression, because if you're stressed, you're going to be stuck, and you're going to be prevented from getting to a place where you're able to work on yourself and move forwards. It's almost like having the handbrake on your car. Okay, stress is the handbrake. You can try to drive without it, but you're not going to get very far. Okay, and it's not worth that effort. So with that in mind, to take this further, I'm going to put together a mini masterclass or a seminar, whatever you want to call it, called The 3 Secrets to Success: How to Thrive in Turbulent Times. And I'm going to give you some more information about that on Monday. So if you are interested, just make sure you follow off, because I'm going to announce about that on Monday. It's going to be really useful, and I'll cover the 3 main things you need to do to actually get through this horrible period at the moment. But that's everything for today. I know I've waffled on for about 15 minutes when I meant to be 5, but this is a topic I actually really enjoy. So that's everything. Hopefully that gives you some ideas on how to deal with your stress in the current situation, and we'll go deeper into that in the seminar. So just make sure you're following me for that. On Monday the announcement will go out, so check in for that. But other than that, any questions or anything, or if you need anything, just ping me a message, because I'm about if you need any shopping or anything. Not that there's much in the shops, but if I can help you, I will. So just shoot me a message and look out for that announcement on Monday.